Hello everyone, I want to talk today about the INFJ Unconscious and the light that this throws on the way that we relate, in particular to the SE function, the NI function of course. To this extent, the video probably applies to INTJs to a large degree as well, but I think it is more focused on INFJs, and you'll understand why when I get into the real meat of the matter. So I think there is a way to throw more light on the difficulties that we have with the SE function, pardon me. And by throwing more light on these difficulties, these challenges, by looking at these challenges from a new angle, I think this holds the promise of finding new ways of channeling the SE function and integrating it more and more. So you know what the traditional story is. SE is our inferior function. So people tend to assume automatically that SE will never be completely integrated because as an inferior function, it cannot be fully integrated. If it were fully integrated, there would be no real meaning to it being an inferior function. Now we know this explanation. What's interesting about this explanation, and I have provided it at times, but usually I try to not provide this explanation alone. I don't try to focus on only this explanation because it is, in a real sense, a tautological explanation. It doesn't really explain anything. It kind of takes on faith that Jung's words on the matter, are the last word on the matter, since he is the one who was the first to say that the inferior function can never be fully integrated by the person. So we kind of take it on faith. And when we try to explain it a bit further, we tend to, again, refer to parts that are not independently proofs of anything. So we will say things like, well, since NIs are dominant, SE has to be its opposite because of the whole concept of the unity of opposites in individuation, for example. But this is not really telling us, this is kind of a formal explanation by reference to the theory, by reference to the framework, an explanation as to why SE cannot be integrated fully and why sometimes it seems it can hardly be integrated at all and poses so many issues for INFJs and INTJs. But we could try to give a more substantive, something that actually adds something rather than referring simply to a model, simply to a theory, however much we like it, however much we consider it to be highly informative and highly illuminating, okay? So imagine now, and this is what I think I am adding. This is the new angle I've been talking about, okay? Imagine now that that NI gives a world, okay? I should say, as I always try to do, that it's not just that NI gives a world, is that NI as a dominant function gives a world. Someone who is an SI dominant would have SI giving a world, and so on and so forth. But for INFJs and INTJs, NI gives a world, which means that your world is structured by NI. I call it oceanic, right? This is the metaphor I've been using a lot lately. It structures the way that we experience reality, okay? Now it structures it in a way that we are not conscious of, which is why it's hard to even come to that realization in the first place, except by introspection and reading and connecting the dots. I always emphasize that alienation can be understood as this kind of opposition between the regimented external world, social world embedded in the physical, and the oceanic NI world. Explains alienation for NI dominance, made worse, so to speak, by the INFJ's possession of FE, which is intersubjective, so again, social world rather than more impersonal, like the T of the INTJ. But nevertheless, the idea is that if our experience of the world is structured by NI in a way that is absolute, cannot be changed, and at the same time a way that we are not aware of, well, we have to conclude that this way, this filter, if you like, this structural filter, is pervasive and unconscious. It's not entirely inaccessible, pardon me, to consciousness, since it is possible for me right now to talk about it. And NI itself facilitates this contact. So NI has a way of allowing the possessor of NI dominance, the one who was gifted by NI dominance, to look into it. NI gives it, in a way, it's an act of self-sacrifice by NI, when I think about it. Maybe not self-sacrifice, but self-giving. NI gives itself to the NI dominant. It gives itself as a function, but it also gives itself, by giving itself as a function, it gives itself to be viewed as a world. We use the NI function to explore, investigate, and dwell within our own NI world in a more conscious fashion. Right? That's, again, playing on this whole idea of, you know, the contradiction in NI being both a conscious function because it's our dominant function, and yet in many ways an unconscious function, because intuition is all about the ways of the unconscious, right? So introverted intuition is unconscious, and at the same time as a dominant is conscious. NI gives itself. It gives itself to us so we can see it for what it is as a world, right? So function and world. World is unconscious, the function is conscious. That's how NI is both conscious and unconscious. As a world, it's unconscious. As a function, it is conscious. You need to wrap your head around that. It's a difficult thought, I know. Now, what does this say about how we relate to the SE function, and what can it say that we have not said yet? Well, consider that SE as an inferior function. We know that from the start, we don't start with conscious SE, and we can only gradually and with effort attain to a higher level of integration. That's part of spiritualization. That's part of individuation, okay? We can say that not just because we take it on faith that Jung is right about the inferior function, but because we can observe it in our own lives. Right? We can observe that we have difficulty being in touch with the world of presence. It's a lot easier for us to be there but absent than to be there but present. We have our ways about absence in a way that we don't about presence. Presence for the INFJ is always an effort. Presence is an effort for us. It's usually a valuable effort, but it's still an effort. That by itself suggests that SE is way less integrated than an NI, because that NI is about absence. Absence from the here and now of external reality, because NI is not about the here and now of external reality. NI is all about the temporal pattern, the temporal unfolding, the past, present, future. It is not about this, you know, this moment in time that is collected and vivid and intense and literal and discrete. That's the SE capture of the point, you know, at a particular point in time and space. It's isolated. That's the SE input. NI is not like that. NI is always unfolding. NI doesn't really have those boundaries. So NI is absent from the space of presence, whereas this is the space of SE, right? Now, if our unconscious is in many ways describable as an NI colored unconscious, perhaps we can even go so far as to say it's an NI unconscious that we have. It does mean that unconsciously, like a great deal of our unconscious world is dominated by a sense of absence of material and social reality. And yet we have this SE function that, since it is not fully integrated, still has to inhabit this NI world, because insofar as a function is not conscious, where it's going to be? In the unconscious. So it's going to be hard for SE to live within a world whose own, I was going to say law or code, but that in itself is not a very NI description. So whose own motions and patterns and regions and colorings are not aligned with the world presence that the SE function embodies. So how is the SE function in the NI world going to thrive? You know, and how is it not going to get engulfed in this kind of dense, thick, viscous NI darkness? How is it going to be able to get out? In other words, how is it going to be able to get conscious, integrated? This is what we're going to see in the next video. Okay guys, so hopefully you enjoyed this video. Give me a like. Don't forget I wrote 2 books on the INFJ. The first one is called The Ecstatic Soul, and you look at the INFJ personality, and this book is all about the mind of the INFJ, what's it like to be an INFJ, and to think like an INFJ. If you're interested, check the link below, as well as The Infinite Soul, which is its sequel, came out last year. It's really good. Check the reviews, helped a lot of people. INFJ life in the modern world. This is more about the INFJ in the world, how to be an INFJ in the world, how to face challenges, how to grow, how to lead a purposeful, meaningful, and rich life. If you're interested, check the link below. And as usual, guys, don't forget that my Patreon is the lifeblood of my channel, so I'd be super grateful if you consider supporting me. You get perks in return, such as access to our Discord server, the fourfold, and a bonus video every 2-3 weeks on a topic of your choosing. So if this interests you, see you down there. You know it supports me massively. I could not do it without you, so hopefully see you there. And in any case, see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.